This is the GPL podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
Oh boy. Jupe making mistakes. I love it.
You know, it was good to see that the Big Ten Network recognized how to cover hockey last week.
Boy, if North Dakota hasn't won every game, fire the coach.
Dave Haxtell was fired 32 times.
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 301. January just keeps getting better, doesn't it, Viggs?
I mean, if you like Gopher hockey, it's been a tough month, but it's still some season left. You never know. Never know what's going to happen.
Well, so we know the Gophers have had it rough, 7 losses in a row, but our number one guest, Todd Milewski, is joining us tonight. His 20th appearance.
20.
Good evening, Todd.
Wow.
How's it going?
That's going great. It's even better now. I've hit
Wow.
20. Wow.
I looked it up today. You were at 19, so now you're at number 20, our top guest of all time. I mentioned like the Gophers have lost 7 in a row. The Badgers have lost 4 in a row at home, and after you were Vig's number one team for quite a few weeks in November and December. They've dropped quite a bit recently, but certainly doing better than the Gophers.
Well, I mean, I was going to make a comment about a low bar there, but I'll let it pass.
Bring it on, man. We love it.
No, it's that I think the success they had 2 years ago was in Mike Casey's first season was quicker than a lot of people thought. The fallback last year was opposite of what a lot of people thought, and now we're kind of starting to see where the ups and the downs kind of happen in the same season sometimes. So a lot of it has been due, honestly, to they lost their top 2 centers to injury a few weeks ago. That's rough when you bring in Michigan State and Penn State to try and be strong down the middle with fill-ins, and they felt it. That's going to be a challenge for as long as those guys are out there. Hoping they get Gavin Morrissey and Vasily Zelenov back soon. They've been skating, but yeah, they need to pull out of this before it really starts spiraling uncontrollably downhill.
And then we've got Minnesota Viggs actually getting healthier. They got Paulson back, but 3-1 loss, 3-2 loss at Michigan State. Not terrible losses. They didn't play terrible. You look at Luca's, his save percentage has been outstanding. They just don't have the offense or the defense right now to get a win.
Yeah, I mean, the margins are so fine for this Gopher team. You know, when you're relying on your goalie and your power play and the rest of your game is a little incomplete, it's tough when you shoot yourself in the foot and you just hand the other team goals. And that's a little bit what Minnesota has been doing here in these tight games against good teams. Bob Motzko today said, this team has been touching the stove off and on throughout the season. Well, when you touch the stove against Michigan State, against Michigan, against Penn State, the stove is really hot and you're going to get burned badly. And that's what's happening to this group right now. And, I think they're kind of throwing up a Hail Mary here with putting Brody Lamb with LJ Mooney and Brody Zemer and seeing if that can give them some offense 5-on-5. Because you look at their power play, it has been super dynamic. And those 3 are a big reason why. And I think if you can put them together 5-on-5, you're hoping that can spur your team and give you some offense where you're not finding it right now.
Well, all Zemer does is score power play goals, Viggs.
Yeah, I think they need him to get some 5-on-5 goals.
That would help.
I like the way that those 3 look together. I think it forces Brody Lamb to be more engaged. And as an upperclassman, they need him to be engaged. And when you're at the wing, sometimes it's hard to get engaged in the D zone. And with him, maybe a little bit more size, a little bit more speed, it can add an element to the Gopher lineup.
It's been interesting. Todd, we haven't seen this kind of losing streak in quite a while here in Minnesota. It was goes back to 1997 when they won lost nine straight, I should say. They're at 7 now. We knew January is going to be tough. I know you guys don't have any sympathy coming from the Badgers, but it's been a bit of an odd year for Minnesota.
It has been, and I mean, I was going to look up earlier this week when the last time both of these teams were on losing streaks of 4 games or more going into meetings against each other. Well, never. So,
oh jeez,
that's
what's that? 75 years of playing each other after a long break.
15 games or something like that. Yeah, there's never been anything like this. So, that tells you how unusual it is that you have both of these teams on that kind of and I think going back to September, October, everyone kind of felt like, yeah, this may not be the best year for the Gophers, but they've always just kind of gotten through that with a 4th place finish or a 3rd place finish or something like that, and hovering around 2 games over 500 and something like that, and it's but I do think that everyone has these kind of years, and some of them last a lot longer than others. But you look around the Big Ten, and it feels like everyone goes through this at some point. It's really hard to keep up with everyone that's bringing in big names, and we've seen how much the CHL has meant to the Big Ten this season, and I know that's a topic that's come up a few times with Minnesota and how the recruiting went in the offseason, but I'd love to know, the hindsight being 2020, whether anything goes differently last offseason.
Well, Vig's, just a couple things here. So, everyone has a down year. Minnesota has had 5 sub 500 seasons in 50 years. And this is technically, well, depending how they finish, they're at 340 right now. They haven't had a under 400 since 1972. So 1, it is a little historically bad. 2, Todd's kind of right on when it comes to CHL because Minnesota decided not to do that this year. Maybe took the year off and see what happens, and we're finding out what happens.
Well, I think we're also finding out how deep college hockey is this year. I think in some of those past years, Minnesota, even if they lost a bunch of players and had to bring up young players, the rest of college hockey wouldn't be as deep. And we look at some of these CHL players, not all of them are putting up big numbers, but they're providing depth for a lot of these teams. And they're providing depth that can play minutes, learn on the go, maybe not give away mistakes, but they're able to, control the pace of the game. I think one of the issues with Minnesota this year is they're just not able to play at the pace that we're used to seeing. And so they're not being able to outscore any mistakes. Whereas I think you see a lot of these other teams, they've got enough talent where they're still able to capitalize on mistakes and outscore their mistakes. And you just look at goal scoring for Minnesota, it's down this year. And, hindsight's 2020, they definitely could have used a couple defensemen to help them in their transition. But I think they're, having to be patient with what they got. It's a very young team. I know the fans are tired of hearing that. But, the margins are pretty fine right now. I think if they would have gone 500 through January, there wouldn't be as many concerns. But the fact that they haven't won yet has a lot of alarm bells ringing.
And it doesn't help for the fan base to see, you bring in a D3 guy late forward, you leave a roster spot open. I mean, I could see why the fans are a little more upset. When I was at the Michigan series, Friday night when they announced Bob's name, there was a couple little boos going on there. I don't know if it happened for you the Saturday night, but there was just a little bit of jeering there. So we know the fans are noticing it here, Viggs.
Yeah, and this team, when they had injuries to Leo Gruba and Cal Thomas early in the year, that really wasn't something they had depth to cover. You know, when they lose Eric Paulson, when they've got a couple other guys get banged up front, you know, they just don't have the depth to handle that. You know, the roster limit thing at Minnesota, it was probably smart of them to keep that extra roster spot in case, you know, you had a goalie injury and you wanted to bring somebody in and still stay at 27. But my understanding is that they probably could have gone over that limit and grandfathered in some players and given themselves a little bit more flexibility. Because as I see national writers talking and writing about, you know, I don't think this limit of 27 is going to stay where it is.
Arizona
it's gotta
State.
go up.
I saw Schlossman talk about, you know, posting some videos about the Arizona State thing, Todd, that they're stuck too. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, and everyone, I mean, go back a year to when the number kind of came out that it was going to be 26 and that was going to be what people are going to be playing with. Everyone knew that it was going to be a problem, but no one could find the people to get to, I guess, explain how it was going to be a problem and just the particular situations where this was going to cause issues. You lose a goalie. You cannot, you lose a goalie early in the season, let's say. You cannot go through a full season with two goalies and expect there not to be like a real risk of further injury to one of them. That's an awful lot of work to put on two goalies throughout the season. Not just talking about games, but the 5 days of practice, 4 days of practice. It doesn't take long especially when you can dress 22 now. So it doesn't take long to get into a situation where you're not able to dress a full lineup. And we considered 22 to be a full lineup. If that happened in other sports, this would have been solved a long time ago. But now that this is part of the settlement went through so many different hurdles and so many legal approvals, and it was negotiated, you know, to the extent that it's kind of like as close as it's been to a collective bargaining agreement in college, that it's gone through, that is going to make it really hard to change that unless you can, you know, really convince everyone that this is in the best interest of a specific sport. And you're talking about what NCAA has, how many sports are under the settlement? 20 some, right? So
something like
that's where I think there's going to be real issues revisiting this after it's already been decided. If you could have convinced someone that say, hey, 27 or 28 is a better number for safety reasons for hockey, that would have been a lot better to do that last year than having to do it now after the fact, unless you can find the right people to persuade that, yeah, this probably doesn't need to be opened again.
Well, I think one of the things is at least having practice players so that you can run a practice. Because, you know, Minnesota ran into some goalie issues a couple of years ago where Potter had to put on the pads for a practice. And he's like, I'm not doing that again. So then they're running a practice with all these draft prospects, and they've got a shooter tutor up in goal. And so you've got a guy up there trying to do screen and tips, and they're trying to do it off this, you know, net. And it's just not productive for them. And I think college hockey is too big of a sport to have this. And you look at women's basketball, they still have the men's practice players helping them out, right, and they're not part of the settlement. So you just kind of wonder, what are we doing here with this sport and putting the, you know, the handcuffs on it?
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see, I don't know if this is still the case, but when years ago, players were brought up from club teams, from ACHA teams, I believe they lost their eligibility to go back to that ACHA team. I don't know if that's still how it works, but if we could solve that problem, then too, that, you know, if a team needs somebody as a practice player for 6 weeks, that shouldn't rule that player out for a club.
Well, think about it too. There used to be JV teams on a lot of these schools, you know, until the 80s. I mean, so you could always throw in JV players for practice. So you always had bodies, Todd. You always had bodies back then.
Yeah, and it's I think we see a lot of things differently in terms of what's safe to practice with. A lot of guys would probably practice with injuries before that won't now for good reason. Not to say that anyone's, choosing to stay off the ice, but don't put yourself at further risk. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you could see it was going to be a problem, but I just don't know that NCAA hockey has the juice on its own to make this kind of change. It's going to take a big effort.
Well, hopefully they get on it in this offseason, at least start talking about it, things like that. But like you said, we've been talking about, home regionals and all this other stuff. And hopefully it's something that at least we could get all the coaches on board to feel that way.
That's a good point too, because there's still the division in what's right for regionals. I don't know if we're ever going to get that off of a more 60-40 kind of split.
True, but I'm hoping at least if we can get all the coaches on board for the settlement to 26 rosters plus to 28 maybe, but maybe we won't even get that.
How many schools are even abiding by the house settlement too? So that's a factor too of the ones that aren't limited to that 26, they don't really care about this. It's not for them. So that's making a small group even smaller, I guess, when you're talking about the people who are interested in making that change.
Well, we'll just have to sit and wait on that one. That's all we can do is just sit and wait and hope for changes. Vigs putting out an article this week on Minnesota finances and who made what and who lost what. You're the only one reporting this stuff from Minnesota.
Yeah, on the day, I was the only one to break the news. So I was very vigilant of the financial reporting. As we all know, in January, schools have to start releasing that data. Minnesota is probably more transparent than most. And so you were able to look at the numbers and, $163 million in revenue for the U, almost $10 million for hockey. Very impressive numbers for both. That Big Ten media rights deal is a big chunk of that revenue. You can just see how important it is to be a part of the Big Ten conference. And as a legacy member, getting that $63 million pays a lot of bills around campus. And I still think there are programs that wishes they had more money to spend, but next year's budget's going to be even tighter when they have the $20.5 million of revenue share money to pay out. And that started July 1 this year. So I know the books are probably pretty tight for a lot of schools as they figure out how to manage that. But those numbers are on GPL.
And it's going to be the same situation for Wisconsin, Todd. They're going to have that same 20 million to deal with as well.
Yeah, I was looking at those numbers in the last couple of weeks, and for Wisconsin side, they're at. I look at the because of the way Wisconsin does things. I look at expenses first, and they're at 193 million for last school year because their revenues, as they list them on the NCAA's financial accounting, will almost always almost match that to the dollar. It's a $10,000 difference or something like that, because they only choose to bring over as much donation funding from their foundation as they need to cover the expenses. So they're never really going to have be too much in the red or black there in terms of the net between revenues and expenses. So the revenue side is always a little bit of that's not exactly how much revenue they brought in total, because they don't have to count how much donations they received until they actually spend it. So that's one of the tricks of NCAA or finances on individual campuses, is that you never really know how someone is choosing to interpret what these numbers mean. So comparing between schools is always a little dicey for me. But.
And you've mentioned that several times, Viggs.
There's always tricks to the accounting. Like for hockey,
Yep.
you can see that their licensing and sponsorship money's gone up. Part of that's because of the way the books have been cooked by the U this year. You know, the 3M naming rights for Mariucci are now getting attributed to hockey. So that explains one of the increases there. They're also getting their share of the Learfield from, you know, the broadcast for hockey that shows up there. And so just a little bit of accounting, but you can really look at the ticket sales though, the media rights and other kinds of revenues like the football playoff share that comes into the schools. They've actually separated those out as line items now in the new reporting system. So I think that gives you a good, you know, look at what each program is able to do. And then it's broken out by sport. So you can see, you know, ticket sales for each sport, which are for the U, you know, football has declined a little bit in their ticket sales. Hockey's held about the same. And, you know, that's an interesting look at their budget there. And the Alston money is in the budget this year, which has gone up significantly at Minnesota.
I was excited to see a page not being used yet but for the future of the breakdown of revenue share money spent by sport. And I am not sure if anyone's going to try and play games with that and say, well, it all goes to the not attributed to any specific sport.
Penn State
line,
will.
the 20.5 million. But I will be fascinated to see what that ends up being next year for a lot of schools. I mean, I think we have an idea, general idea that, you know, 75% or whatever it is going to football at a lot of places, but I'd like to see the actual numbers there next year.
I mean, I just look at what, you know, was said earlier today, or at least I heard earlier today, is, you know, Coy for the football. What, you get a $2 million deal from Oregon? Minnesota's not going to do that, Viggs. They just don't have that kind of money.
Well, everyone's going to have to pay out the $20.5 million. And Mark Coyle said that they're going to participate in that game. You know, being a part of the Big Ten means you want to field competitive teams, and that's part of doing business these days.
And Brever's on. He's Title IX is going to affect a lot of this too. It's going to be tricky. Before we go to break, we had some little news out there. I want to get your guys' fact or fiction. Viggs, Oklahoma State hockey, fact or fiction?
I think it's probably fan fiction would be how I would put it out.
Great way of putting it.
Beautiful.
I don't think there's anybody at Oklahoma State who's actually, you know, pushing this 100%. I think there's some people that would like it to happen, and they're just putting out the ideas. I would be shocked if we see a Big 12 hockey school.
Fact or fiction, Todd? You know you've got $200 million in your back pocket for a new ice arena, don't you?
Yeah, that's the first thing I'm spending that $200 million on, right? Is a rink in Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm gonna say hopeful fiction. I would love to see more schools get involved, but I think we need to step back and take a look at the overall picture right now of college sports and where money is going and needs to be going. And that is the reason why I kind of hit pause on any real hopes of schools going fully into adding sports right now. We're seeing a lot go the other way.
Tennessee State or something supposed to be coming soon, Viggs?
They announced that they were going to be going D1, I think this year, but that obviously fell apart. It's really complicated to launch a D1 hockey program. You know, you look at these numbers across the,
and you got to have women's too. You really do.
It's $2-3 million to run a program, and you've got to have a facility that works as well. So it's going to take a big check to make it happen. And, you know, as much as we'd like to see college hockey grow, there's plenty of players to fill roster spots, but it's going to cost money.
But we have seen Penn State and Arizona State make it look pretty attractive over the last decade. So I can understand where people are pointing to those two places and are like, look, this is what can happen. But a lot needs to be figured out financially. That's part of the country, though, and a program with some boosters that are not shy with the money. So
There's a lot of SEC
That's why I don't
schools
completely
too.
rule it out. Well, right.
Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, they all have big club teams and big support.
But if you're going to say to someone that's supporting that athletic department, say at Alabama, do you want to spend $4 million on a hockey program, or do you want that $4 million to go into your football program, more into your football program? I think most of them are going to say, put it to football.
I'm going to say fiction for now, but I just thought I'd get you guys a little thought on that. That was kind of breaking today. But now we're going to talk about one of our sponsors, Vigs, and Cascade CBX Sport. You're all over it, aren't you, after practice with those young kids just wearing you out?
Yeah, I've got a few aches and pains. I'm not getting any younger. And so, I'm looking for a little help. And Cascade CBX Sport, our new sponsor this year, is a company looking to revolutionize the CBD industry. And too often CBD gets lumped right with THC, which gives it a little bit of a stigma. But Cascade CBX Sport invested time and money to achieve NSF certification for sport. And that means it's free of any banned substances. So that means whether you're a weekend warrior or professional athlete, you can have peace of mind choosing completely clean products to manage pain and reduce inflammation. Check them out at cascadecbxsport.com and trust the shield to stay on the field.
All right, let's get to your top 20 this week. Vigs, no change at the top. I know the North Dakota fans aren't going to like you not putting North Dakota as high because they've been kind of around 2 and 3 in the NPI, but obviously you had Providence making a good jump, Wisconsin going the other way, Minnesota Duluth going the other way. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm starting to expand my top 10 to be the elite teams of college hockey.
Okay.
I see this 10 is pretty strong, and it's hard to change them up too much. We see some splits in this group. We have some losses as Wisconsin's starting to drop a little bit, but I still think they're a very strong team. You look at them in the MPI, they're still in great position. And I just think looking at the Big Ten right now, that those are the best teams in college hockey from what I can tell. You look at the teams that they've beaten, their quality win bonuses, their strength of schedule, it all kind of adds up where, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin all look very, very strong right now. And then if you look out east, there's just a lot of churn. You look at, BU is off my list here. BC has had some games where they've looked good, but they've been very inconsistent and around the bubble. Providence, probably the most consistent Hockey East team out there, but they've had some struggles this year.
Todd, what did your poll look like this week?
Pretty similar up at the top. I don't mind you having Western Michigan at 2 Vigs after seeing them in the tournament in Milwaukee a few weeks ago. I mean, that's a team that just knows how to win games, close out games that they're leading in the third period. And obviously we saw where it took them last season, but my question with Penn State is always the goaltending, and I'm a little more sold on them after seeing them in person last weekend. No question with goaltending at Michigan State. So yeah, I think I had Michigan State, Western, North Dakota, Penn State as my top 5.
And then, we go over and we compare it to the NPI. Pretty consistent. You see a lot of movement. Providence going up 5, Duluth down, Wisconsin down week over week. A little more movement towards the bottom of the kind of top 20 of NPI Vigs. But are we going to start seeing some of the voters maybe start to lean more towards the NPI? Or are they still kind of unsure about the whole NPI itself?
I do think that people tend to lean, like they compare their top 20 against the NPI to, confirmation bias or see where they've got outliers. I always look at, the 20 through 30 of the NPI being like, am I missing someone? Is there a game on ESPN Plus that I need to watch a condensed version of just to check out a team? Are they really that good? I look at Dartmouth and I'm just not as impressed as their ranking. And you look at their strength of schedule, it's not very good. And yet we still see in the NPI, these ECAC teams still looking very strong. Quinnipiac, even Rand Pecknold early in the year said he's not sure this team has what it takes. They're going to have to prove it to themselves. And, they have won some games here the last little stretch, but a little bit of an unknown there.
And then, we got Augustana and there's St. Cloud, Minnesota State. There's your drop on Boston University, dropped 7 or 6 spots. And, UMass jumped 7. Bowling Green jumped 7. So I do like that some teams are at least able to move around here. It's not really set in stone, is it, Viggs?
Well, I definitely think the MPI, as we unveiled that charting feature that I suggested to you last week, and you immediately got it on the site, you can see that the gaps between teams are getting tighter. And one of the things that people talked about is that pairwise and MPI looked very similar at the end of the year, regardless which formula. But I think we've seen a lot more variability to MPI throughout the year. So you're seeing some big movement. As the end of the year comes, I think it'll look more like pairwise in terms of what we expect. But there's still that volatility right now as the season continues.
What are your thoughts on NPI so far, Todd?
I haven't really had any reason to think of it as anything different than the pairwise. I mean, really, we see a number. We don't have to look at a grid. This is fine. Right? That's kind of okay. I really was a fan of the pairwise because I understood how it worked, and I don't know if I can say the same to the degree yet with the NPI, because that's a lot of math that just keeps mathing. But we'll all get there. I think it's a different way of saying the same thing.
And you can see, Viggs, it's Michigan's, I went back to the beginning of January. Michigan's been at top, but everyone else has just kind of jumped around 3, 4. Providence up 11 spots. It's early January.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed from this last weekend, Michigan Tech, they lost at home to Northern Michigan, which in pairwise was always a huge killer to have losses like that. And I was really curious to see what kind of impact it would have in MPI, and it sunk them down. They dropped way down here.
Where are they?
You had it.
Did I go?
Oh,
sorry. There they are, number 24. My bad.
But they were, I think, 12 or 13 before that loss. And it just really sunk them down. Things are so tight from 11 to 25 there in the MPI.
So, they dropped 6 just in 1 week. And there's Boston University dropped 6. So
some big swings.
I'm glad he gave me the idea of doing this stuff. It's kind of neat to look at past numbers and just quickly bring them up. So fun stuff. Oh, it's been a little crazy. The NPI, people getting used to it. Are they going to tweak it, Viggs? We keep hearing, hey, maybe it's not even the final numbers yet.
I haven't heard anyone say anything yet about tweaks this season, especially at Minnesota. Tom McGinnis would be the one guy who might be involved with that, and he's headed over to St. Thomas. So, we lose that source a little bit from the Minnesota perspective. And Bob always just kind of has that feeling, whatever my schedule is, I'm going to play it. Whatever the rankings say, I'm just going to go with it. I'm not going to complain about it too much. So that's the perspective I hear around here. I don't know if Todd hears anything different in Madison country.
Not really, because it's, I think we've all just gotten used to the fact that you go check what happens after you play, and that which way did we go and how far. It's probably a little bit different now than it was 20 years ago, with a lot more prediction capabilities of knowing which way you're going to go, depending on how the result is. But yeah, I think we're all just kind of the thing I'm still trying to get a feel for is, like Viggs was talking about, how much a loss costs you, when you talk about losing at home, how, especially if it's a team against a team that's not highly ranked. Does that mean 4 spots? Does that mean 5 spots? How far is that going to go? So we'll know more as this goes on, and things, I think, change more, or it's more volatile earlier in the season because there aren't as many games in.
Yeah.
So there could be more swings that way. When you get towards the end, it's kind of like, a baseball player's batting average could change a lot in one game early in the season, but by the end you're going a point here and there because of so many at bats. So I don't know if it's going to be the same as we got used to with the pairwise that way, but I'm thankful that we don't have to track the common opponents and head-to-heads on flipping comparisons because that was keeping track of a lot of different things there to think about in that when you're talking about the last weekend of the regular season.
But I also think that some of that stuff could lock places in for teams, whereas the MPI, I think there's volatility because you don't have those factors that might hold one team over another despite an RPI change. And now, especially looking at the charting feature on GPL, you can just see everything start to tighten up and narrow. And that always, to me, shows that it's possible to jump over somebody pretty quickly if a couple of results go a certain way.
One thing, Todd, we don't have historical data for the women, but the women's NPI doesn't really change much. It's top 3 and a couple other teams at the top 10, and it just stays there. I've seen
Penn they're not losing much either.
Yeah, they're not losing much either. But that kind of wanted to get me into discussion. I know you've been following a lot of Wisconsin women's hockey. How are these top teams going to be affected with the Olympics coming up? It's not going to knock Minnesota, Ohio State, or Wisconsin out of any really spots, I don't think. But it's an interesting development. You could lose a higher seed pretty easily in the NCAA tournament because all your great players are off in Italy.
Right. So I believe it's the top 4 teams in the NPI have lost their leading goal scorer to the Olympics. So Wisconsin, Ohio State, Minnesota, obviously, and Penn State. Yeah. It just stands me just a massive shift all in between one weekend and the next now. If it was the kind of thing where, you came back from the break after, having 3 or 4 weeks off, and then all of a sudden your lineup has changed, that's something else. But now you're doing this between, for Wisconsin's comparison, playing Bemidji State at home last weekend with your full roster and playing at Minnesota this weekend with your scaled back roster against Minnesota's scaled back roster. So it's going to be a wild ride for some of these teams, especially, I think Wisconsin doesn't have as much scoring, a percentage of its scoring gone, but they are really the only team that's losing its dominant goalie. So that's going to be a big thing to watch there. You've got a freshman that's going to go in and really play her first big start at Ritter on Friday. So good luck.
Yeah.
And hope the players in front of you are paying attention to that.
Well, luckily these teams are pretty good. They can handle this type of thing. Probably what concerns these teams more, it's not as big of a deal when we're playing Minnesota because we're playing each other. Our rankings are going to drop a loss here and there. It's when like you said, if like Wisconsin's going to Bemidji State or going to Mankato or St. Cloud, where all of a sudden, boy, we're in a tough game here. This could hurt us. That's where things, I think, become a little more unfair, but it's just the way things are.
Yeah, and like you said, it would take an awful lot for them to drop out of the upper spots.
But a number 1 seed, number 2 seed, number 3, I mean, it can make a difference.
When you're in the 3, 4, 5, 6 range, those are really big differences. You're near a 3, you don't know who you're playing, but you're going to be playing a lower team. When you're a 4, you know who you play. It's number 5, and you're at home. When you're the 5, you know who you play, but it's on the road. And when you're 6, you got to win 2 games to get to the Frozen Four, and they're both on the road. So, that means that those are big differences in how your playoff path goes. And If that's impacted by players being gone, I can imagine there's going to be a lot of raised voices in Florida this year, but to what end? I just don't know. Again, this is another thing where I don't know that they're going to have any power to change anything, because
True.
this was done this way because now there's the PWHL, and they're not going to not have their players for a full season, to lose them to a residency for a full season. So, new world, everyone's just got to get used to it. And I think maybe there can be some discussions on scheduling and when things happen, but that's for another day, probably.
Well, I just thought it was going to be an interesting topic because, like you said, Minnesota's facing Wisconsin this weekend. They're playing each other. Probably a good time to play. At least they're both down, or they're both affected at the same time. But it could get tricky when you have those opponents that are maybe just a little bit further down. Maybe you're playing a Duluth or whatever it may be, who's obviously still a good team, but yeah, it could mess up your WCHA points. Just things here, a little bit here and there. I don't anticipate it, but the potential's there. And because we saw quite a couple of years ago when we had a couple Gophers leave for the Olympics. They obviously got through that. Probably not as much college players going as some of the women, but we've seen it before.
Well, I think it was pretty rare for the Minnesota men's team to lose as many players as they did to the Olympics that year. But it seems like in the women's game, they're used to losing players throughout the year. So it's just another thing to adjust to and rally from. I think the one thing is, you look at schools like Minnesota and Wisconsin, they are going to make the tournament. I think there's such a wide spread in the college game right now between the elite teams and everybody else that, at least they're insulated from that.
I mean, but obviously you don't want any injuries in the Olympics, because that could, I mean, Wisconsin goalie injured out for the season at the Olympics. That would be huge, Todd. That would just be huge.
Changes everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
You never know when you have the Tom Brady come in and take over and run with things. But I think there's that potential for, there's also just the fact that the mental and physical grind that they're going through in the Olympics, and then having to turn around, come back, let's say the U.S. wins a gold. Does the team have a lot of appearances lined up? Do they all go on Jimmy Fallon? Do they all want, is that next week a celebration for them? And when do they get back to their team, with that next couple days being the lead up to the first round of the league playoffs? There's a lot of nerves around teams that have players going to the Olympics, because you don't know what's going to happen there. Even if they, don't get injuries, they're going to be coming back taxed from being in that tournament. And you just hope that they get enough of a rest and enough of a little bit of a chance to recover to be ready for, the women's postseason goes so fast. 2 weeks of league playoffs, 2 weeks of the NCAA playoffs, and it's over. And it's so if you're not ready for it, it can hit you hard fast. So a lot to watch for there when those players come back, in terms of just like, what frame of mind are they in?
I guess it all matters in the end, Viggs, is that we have Canadian tiers, right? That's what we really hope. John Hamm didn't understand it, but in the commercials, but Canadian tiers is what we need, don't we, Viggs?
I think hockey people understand that. So we saw it at World Junior. We saw Canadian tiers all over at World Junior.
Oh, what a shame that was, wasn't it?
Yep.
We didn't care. Well, we need to talk about Cub Foods, Viggs, your favorite local grocery store. I know that.
Yeah, there's a couple big games this weekend. So if you have plans, Cubs got you covered. You can save $5 when you spend $25 on Pepsi, Gatorade, or Frito-Lay. You can grab Pepsi 24 packs for $9.99 when you buy 2 with your My Cub Rewards card. You know I've got mine, and make sure to use it every time I check out. And Lay's potato chips are 2 for $6, and Pepsi 2 liters just $1.99 when you buy 3. So big weekend coming up. You got to get supplied. You know, I go to Cub. They always have everything I want. Even when it's on sale, you know they have enough inventory to keep you happy. And that's why you can shop happy at Cub.
All right. Let's get into this weekend, boys. First things first. Are you coming this weekend, Todd?
Yes.
Well, you're going to be probably covering a lot of hockey, though, because they're going to have you on the women and the men, aren't they?
Yeah. So that Friday is going to be fun.
Yeah, that's
6 o'clock and start on one building and 7 o'clock in the other. So I'll be over at the women's game for the duration of that. And then
you'll come
for
over and
the
see us.
rest of the third. Yeah, right.
Well, that's good to hear. Are you staying at Viggs? You sleep?
No.
Is he sleeping in the bed this time? So
I didn't get the bat signal that he needed to.
No.
I've added to this bathroom. Now there's like a mirror, there's light fixture things, lots of improvements at Casa de Vigo.
No, we've got more of the family coming up this weekend, so we are getting a hotel. So
are you going to get the kids to do the Mall of America thing? Maybe have a little fun?
No,
they've already done it. They've been there,
we've
done
done
that.
it a bunch of. I don't actually know if we're gonna have a ton of time anyway, because we'll get there Friday afternoon. I've got to get to the women's game, and then Saturday the women play at 2. So yeah, hey, if I come up there and spend 2 full days at the Ritter Mariucci complex, I'm okay with that.
Well,
and I believe Saturday afternoon is a skate with the women Gophers as well. So that'll be something to enjoy for hockey fans taking in that part of the border battle.
I'm going to have to go down there early and watch that myself. We'll have to see. Viggs, 7 straight losses for Minnesota. They got to do something this weekend, and I think they have a good chance this weekend. They haven't been playing terrible, really.
I feel better about them this weekend than I have the last couple, just because we've seen signs of them getting traction. I think the long break from December to January with the World Junior distraction of, not having their coaches around, having some players gone, having all the players in their building, I think that had a bit of an impact on this team. They're so young. I think that definitely showed up in some of their games. And we've just seen a lot of inconsistency breaking out the puck. That was something we saw right away in October when Minnesota had their bad start. And then they got better in November and seemed like they figured it out by December, and then they go on break. A lot of those problems picked up again, and you've seen them start to solve the issues against Michigan State, against Michigan at times, not so much against Penn State, but there are signs for people. Bob likes to say, we're closer to turning the page and being the way we want to be than not. And I know a lot of fans don't believe that, but this team is close and they're getting good goaltending.
And on the flip side, Todd, the Badgers coming in losing 4 straight themselves at home, but they want the season sweep of Minnesota. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that would be a big thing for them, I think. But they know they have other things to kind of focus in on first, on just getting to having a good 3-period game. It feels like they haven't had that in a long time. They were pretty good in the first period last Friday against Penn State, up 2-0, lost 7-2. And towards the end of that, I saw a team that just kind of looked vulnerable, and the body language wasn't good. The reactions were, it was a lot of slamming of sticks and things like that. It just looked like a team that is really trying to find itself through all these injuries that they've had. And it got a little bit better on Saturday, but not good enough to get a win.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't score a 5-on-5 goal all weekend against Penn State, and that's something that desperately has to change. They have to be better there, and just getting more, second and third chances off of zone time. It's goaltending has been a question. There have been good spots, there have been poor spots. I don't fully know where that's headed. Daniel Hauser's played most of the season. He's had some good games, but of late it's been a struggle for him a few times. So there's a lot of signs that are just not pointing in a great direction for the Badgers, and so it to me it becomes a who's more desperate sort of weekend, especially going into Friday. Who's got more just, we need this win tonight, and we are going to put out everything we have to get that. So that actually makes it kind of cool that there's both teams that are just in that fight for getting back on their feet. So we'll see how that plays out.
So what's going on with the no handshakes after the game?
Well, I didn't shake anyone's hand after the game either, and nobody called me on it. So I'm not sure. No, it was
I love the TV. They're just like focusing on it. I'm like, come on. It's just.
Yeah, I don't think the TV angle got the wave, just the somewhat dismissive.
But they got the taunting from the Penn State players as they're going off the ice,
and that was without Mike Hastings saying it. That was a big part of it, right? I mean, there was a lot of emotions at that point. There was a lot of, Wisconsin was upset, and they should have been. They just got swept for the second weekend in a row in their building. And it was coming. It wasn't like this game had been decided for a while and we knew it was ending that way. Penn State scored an empty netter in the last minute. Wisconsin had some chances before that, hit a post. And so it was, felt like they were right there, and it didn't go their way. And I think, and then there was a brawl with 10 seconds to go that stirred some things up. So yeah, there was some frayed nerves there. Mike Hastings said he called Guy Godowski on Monday and they talked it out. Didn't really say what they said, but they've been friends for a long time. So this is that's why it was a little bit surprising for me that, I thought he just shake hands, grit your teeth, get through with it and move on to the next one. But didn't see that happen. It became a thing, and that's what I think as a team, they hate to have to be dealing with that this week, of just kind of keeping that alive, because it's come up a few times. We've seen it make the rounds on social media, and they've had to answer for that a couple times, and so that's never a good thing to have to deal with while you're also dealing with a 4-game losing streak.
Vigs, one thing it does do, it can build a rivalry. When you have
guess
that
who plays each other the last game of the Big Ten season?
Mm-hmm.
It builds rivalries. We've seen it before. Some of the Michigan rivalry was built, players putting out their knee, trying to injure players and things in the past. And that, what? It would be good for Penn State to get some rivalries going, because we know from experience here, even though Penn State was beating Minnesota a lot at some points, people just didn't care about Penn State here at Minnesota. They don't come to the games, and there's no care. But having Penn State be good now and doing those type of things can build rivalries with Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Yeah, I definitely think Penn State is embracing the villain role. And we saw this kind of antic from them against Arizona State early in the season, as the players are enjoying the interactions with the fans. And I think they probably enjoyed the social media attention that they got from those antics. And they're like, well, we swept Wisconsin, let's do it again. And so probably not great for hockey to have that kind of stuff going on. But we've had some players say, this is part of the game. It's a show. It's a little bit of entertainment as well. And if you don't like it, outscore the other team then. Take advantage of it when you have the opportunities to score and win games. Penn State's good this year. Like they have improved their style of hockey, their structure, their talent level, their depth, and they are a tough team to play against. And I think, they're going to be tougher this year than they've been in the past to knock off. And
they will
they're
be
on a heck of a run right now.
They also won't have an Allentown regional to sit home at with either. So
well, they'll have to do it like most teams have to do it. Go on the road into an empty building and figure out how to win a game.
As of right now, they'd be going into Loveland, so to play Denver in the first round. So there's that possibility too, that they might feel the other side of it.
And I think that's good. It just, get more people on board. I wish Maine was more vocal for last season because it happened to them. Vigs, got both games on Channel 9 this weekend, so it's great for us. I know, Todd, that I know Wisconsin station's picking up the Saturday game, I think.
Both games.
Oh, both games. So it's going to be on locally there as well. It's still Badgers, Gophers, Vigs. Let's go.
I do think that fans who follow Gopher hockey should understand that this team is not as bad as their MPI ranking. They have one of the hardest schedules in the country, and they have lost close games lately. If they get a couple bounces, maybe if they had gone to this Lamb, Mooney, Zemer line early in the year, they wouldn't have gone through some of these struggles. But a Bob Motzko team gives players opportunities to develop during the year. He usually doesn't put a roster together where he pigeonholes players into spots and just says, you're here, you're here, you're here. Fill that role. He wants his players to, learn how to play transition hockey. He wants his players to be able to have controlled zone entries. He wants to have power plays that are dynamic and reactive, not, static and planned out plays. He wants to foster creativity. So the outcome of that is you hope as the season goes on that players continue to grow and are a totally different team at the end of the year than they are at the start of the year. And I go to more practices than most people, and they just stick to what they do. Bob's got this kind of recipe with how to coach a team and how to develop talent. And it's not yell at them, discipline them, put them in a defensive structure and say, this is how we have to play. He wants them to play his style. So he's always pushing development with these guys. And unfortunately this year, because of the youth, it's been bumpy. They've cratered themselves. They've had some flat tires, but the staff still believes that they've got enough players, and they've had some guys respond well. Tanner Lucky with his turnover in overtime that cost the Gophers, that was very challenging for him, but he responded with a better weekend. Now he's got to keep doing that and keep growing, because especially at center, Minnesota needs help. They need Eric Paulson back healthy and contributing, and we'll see. This is another opportunity for them to show that.
Todd, we know it's unfortunate you don't get to go to Badger practices because they're always closed, but give me your thoughts. Are you going to go split? Are you going to go sweep? What are you going with this weekend on your picks?
I would say that, in this season as a whole, Wisconsin's the better team, but in this window, I don't know that means a whole lot, because it's been a different look for this group. Obviously, we talked about the guys who aren't in the lineup, and that makes a big difference in just their, I guess their puck control and their ability to keep the puck off the other team's stick. So I feel like if they get a split out of this, that's probably, one, it breaks that losing streak, and I think that is a step they have to make. And they'd probably be happy with getting that, getting a win this weekend. I know they have to not let the start get away from them, because we've seen where the Gophers get going early and then it just snowballs downhill at Mariucci. We've seen that how many dozens of times over the years. If they can have a good start and not get complacent with it, I think they've got a good chance this weekend. But we haven't seen that for a while, so that's what gives me the pause of saying, well, I don't think I can pick them to win 2 games this week because that hasn't been there in a while.
I'm going to say split. Hopefully Minnesota can get off the schneid and because I don't want to see what it's like if they get to 9 losses in a row. So I'm trying to be somewhat positive here, and I'll say split. What do you think, Viggs?
I think we're going to see some overtime this weekend.
Oh, there we go.
And I feel like there is just this chance the Gophers might just get 2 points out of the 6. But I think we're going to see some OT this weekend. And we'll see if Minnesota's learned from their 3-on-3 mistakes and executes a little bit more cleanly. But I think that's the recipe this weekend. Minnesota just has a hard time scoring goals 5-on-5. Vonner here commented, Henderson has scored on 50% of his chances, and they'd have an opening record. And I asked Bob about that today because I saw him have probably like a 10-minute conversation with Beckett after practice today, just kind of talking things through. And I think the coaching staff, as Bob said, in availability today, it'd be a problem if he wasn't getting scoring chances. But the fact that he just continues to get grade A after grade A speaks well of his play. And you have to focus on the process here. If you're Minnesota, if you're a fan, if you're a player, you can't get caught up in all the struggles. But this team is got to find guys who can play and contribute. And I think we're still going to see some bumps in the road with that. Luke Mittelstadt can't play 30 minutes a night the rest of the year. He's got to have some help. And I think, it's tough for the staff to do that at times with their players, give other guys opportunities, but they have to, because you're going to lose Luke next year. You're going to lose Cal Thomas next year. You've got to continue to develop these guys. And there's no better way to develop players than the crucible of the Big Ten schedule and big games against rivals like Wisconsin.
There you go, folks. Todd and I are the positive ones this week. Splits. It's Viggs, Mr. Negative. I saw Mote give you a -1.
I'll take it, Mote.
Mote's the toughest guy to please, though. He's tough. It's just how it is.
Power play's fun to watch.
Well, thanks for coming on for the 20th time, Todd.
Love it. I'm loving it. Here's some of the next 20.
All right.
And here's your next 300.
Oh,
for that matter. Starting at that off.
I'll be on Social Security long before that. Oh, boy. So we appreciate you coming on. Viggs, any last thoughts? Obviously, people go read your finance article. It's wonderful. It gives a lot of insights. What else?
I think just stay patient with this group. I'm seeing some progress out of McLaughlin, out of Rombach, out of Whipple. Those players need to develop. And so just watch for progress with them this weekend. See if they, make the right plays in transition, and if they find opportunities to get involved in the rush. That's the number one opportunity for development with this team, is seeing how those 3 guys play. Because if they don't develop, maybe we'll talk about OT, what could happen.
Oh boy, we'll just have to see. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. We'll be back next week with Cappy coming on to preview the Buckeyes coming to town. For those of you watching live on YouTube or X, and even Facebook, stay tuned for overtime. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week on the GPL podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and get notified each time we go live or post a video. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate our show and leave a review. For those of you watching live, you know what's next. It's Vigo's beverage of the week. It's time for overtime.
Well, 20 episodes with Todd. Hop Slam is in its 20th year of being brewed. So a little bit of serendipity there means we get this 10% double IPA from Bell's for OT tonight. Cheers.
That's very light for you, Vigs. That's not one of your darker bread kinds.
It's still 10% ABV though.
Yeah.
It's just looks, you can see through it, but it's still got plenty of stuff in there.
I love the Vigs dirt teaser. Here for it. Oh boy. Yeah, 20 episodes. Cappy's at 17. He'll get to 18 next week. So you're still ahead of him. You would have been more ahead, except for that one weird season when you like missed a couple shows, or at least
that would have
one.
been 21. Yeah. Right.
Covering basketball. Ugh.
Thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah. I almost blocked that.
Well, Badger basketball is up 67-63 right now over Minnesota. They've come back. So
yeah, that looked like a abysmal first half. I didn't see any of it, but I just saw the score and oof.
Yeah, well,
Big Ten basketball.
Love it.
I don't actually, but
no, it's not. It's not your thing. You guys
even
get over
worse
though
that
playing basketball this year, right?
yeah, I've just never been able to get into basketball like as a fan.
I was a
can
long
follow
time
it,
ago.
but
I loved college basketball in the 80s.
Mm.
You know, where we saw some of the big stars, you know, Patrick Ewing, Phi Slamma Jamma,
yeah,
Worthy and Jordan on the same team. I
Mhm.
mean, it was just cool. And, you know, it had a lot more flow to it as well. I mean, the TV timeouts really wasn't a thing back there in the 80s and 90s, or it just got worse and worse. But now it's just like, there's just a lot less flow, and I don't enjoy it as much. And now I just rarely turn it on.
I think a lot of it was because, you know, I just started putting more and more into hockey, and you know, the crossover, it's tough to follow them both. If you're putting a lot into it. So yeah, that was probably about the time I paid less and less attention, you know, mid 90s ish. And
yeah, that's probably,
I still remember the like the early 90s, you know, back the 92 Duke, Kentucky.
Leitner
and everything. And Pizza Hut used to sell those mini basketballs during March Madness, and like we had like 4 of them. And that I just remember going out into the backyard or into the alley and playing basketball during the tournament.
And it ends up on the snowbank,
40 degrees,
and you're still out there playing.
Yeah. But yeah.
I don't know. What do you do?
The barn is fun though when the Gophers are playing well. I remember watching in person when they upset the Fab Five, and you know, I think Chris Webber fouled out. You know, the student section's chanting left, right, and the place is kind of shaking. I know the days are numbered on that building, but you know,
but is it? Are they stuck with the 100-year thing?
What? No. That place needs to be
historical building. Historical. No. I hope not. Because I know
Universities are kind of like
Grimmer
sovereign property. They can do whatever they want.
Okay.
So they just got to come up with money.
Wow, that's another whole deal. Yeah, because it's not going to be cheap.
But eventually they have to figure it out.
Yeah. And can you, I mean, there's places they can play in the interim, but is that plot of land enough to do what they need to do on?
I think they'd find a new location over there. There's still space over there that they could reallocate, you know, over kind of in between Malcolm Yards and the TCF Stadium. There's lots of land there that they could kind of repurpose and figure something out to build a modern facility that would still fit in their kind of like athletics campus of
And even some parking lots in those areas too that could be turned into that, and then it becomes a parking ramp where it is there now. So you never know. Yeah, they would have to go somewhere. All I know is that Craig Flores says no basketball at Mariucci, please. I hate it. It happens quite a bit for like a basketball tournament, doesn't it?
Oh.
It's not the last couple of years, but they have had state tournament basketball like consolation.
They have done it, but not an ideal location.
Nah, not at all.
Yeah, take it from someone here that covers things in a multi-purpose building. You don't want to do that. You don't want to get into that situation, even if it is only for a couple of years. It leads to a lot of bad things on both sides. So
maybe with all the administrators who've gone over to St. Thomas, maybe they could do a St. Thomas, Minnesota partnership for a couple of years at the Lee and Penny. No, I don't think they get along.
Tom McGinnis, we're not going to see him around the locker room anymore. He was there every night almost, Vigs.
Mm-hmm. And he grew this lovely beard that I thought was a good move by him. I'm a big beard guy, so he got on board. But I think the money and the problems at St. Thomas are a little different than what you have at Minnesota. They're cutting budget. If you looked at the numbers, they can't cut much on certain things, but where they can, they are trying to reduce recruiting, travel, administrative, facilities, rents. Like they're trying to shave where they can.
Yeah, I was kind of stunned at the Wisconsin's team travel line being down as much as it was, just because that's not getting cheaper. The fuel and everything and all the hotels, it's not getting cheaper to do it. So it is a constant, or it's an effort to actually go on fewer trips or fewer days or however you need to do it. To save anywhere you can in the expense line.
Well, the hockey team for their last trip, they bust the gear out to Munn and they flew commercial.
Wow.
That's one of the things you do to cut costs, is you have to do a trip like that. And last year, I think they did that to Notre Dame, and I think Slarks went with Lee on the bus out to Notre Dame, and they got kind of caught in a snowstorm on the way and just had to push on through and figure it out.
Yikes. We'll have to get Slarks on the podcast eventually. He probably has to go to a new occupation first, but it'd be fun to get Slarks on the show. Hopefully they watch. Hi, Slarks.
Yeah, the athletic department always loves it that I keep a watchful eye out for the financial stuff to get posted and all that. So
I'm glad somebody does, because someone needs to be the watchdog over.
Nobody else has. Did anyone else report things?
Spending?
I think Andy Greeter wrote a story about it the next day after we had posted on GPL. I haven't checked the Star Tribune to see if they have. They've been focused on other news in the area. I think. Yeah. So that's important stuff. That's probably a lot more important than my financial stuff. But it's always interesting to be on top of that and compare. I've got a spreadsheet now that goes back, I think, like 14 years of data on the spending in the different budget categories. So,
there's Steve.
Interesting to look at.
Steve said they flew to Denver on commercial as well. So. And kind of what happens with Sun Country? Sun Country's leaving.
Well, they're merging with that other.
They're merging, and they're going to have less presence here.
Yeah, because it's under the other company's name, I think, going forward.
And their hub, they'll have kind of a hub here, I guess, but their headquarters won't be here. And you kind of wonder, does that sponsorship or whatever and playing use starts to become less and less available, starting maybe, it has to be approved. Yeah, it hasn't. It'll probably get approved, that kind of merger, but it could affect a little bit.
Is that a little bit like Northwest becoming Delta, though, or whatever I forgot if there was something in the middle there, but
Well, it could really affect the terminal too, the Humphrey terminal, Vigs, because if they have a less of a presence there, after all the remodeling they've done over there, I love going through terminal 2.
What I did read about this one is that the merger, there aren't many overlapping flights. So it's just adding to what they have. It's not one of those things where they're gonna be able to cut out like administrative costs and things like that, and maybe use their planes a little bit more effectively. But their routes aren't really in competition with each other. They kind of add to each other. At least that's what I've read. I haven't heard from Lou Nanny about, if he's still going to be doing the ads where he's like, "All right, everybody ready to go? How do I turn this thing on? Full thrust."
Oh boy. Interesting season, boys. Interesting season. Like the win percentage of 340 is just not good, Bigs. Yeah, they might be close, but that's still, it's been since before I was born since they've had a hockey team in the 300s.
Yeah, and Bob always says no one feels sorry for us, and I understand that everybody's angry. He's been telling the players, like, you're going to have to put up with this. It's like we had just a huge crowd follow us down to the Frozen Four in Tampa. And all those fans want to see you get to Las Vegas. And when you don't come through with that, what do you expect? Like, they're not going to pat you on the back and say, "Oh, better luck next year." Frozen Four is not going back to Vegas. It's what have you done for me this year? And that's just what goes with it. And I'm still a little baffled that the staff didn't understand that Renzel, Chesley, Kurth, Wood would all leave,
Yeah.
and not have a plan B. But, they brought in Ludke, they brought in McLaughlin, and McLaughlin's been better.
They flipped
lately.
Pritchard too.
They flipped Pritchard too. McLaughlin's been better lately, but it's taken him a long time to come up to speed. And the injuries to Gruber and Thomas definitely didn't help them, and they're in a tough spot.
I'm still been impressed with Rombach. People said, "Oh, he's so slow. He's not going to be that good." He's been really steady, Vigs, and his plus minus shows it. Was he +5? And he's like second on the team in plus minus.
Yeah, he didn't have the best start to the second half, but I think it looked a little bit better last weekend. He's one of those players where he's not going to look super smooth because he's so big, and big players always kind of look kind of awkward in hockey.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed about him, at the end of the first half was just his decision making and his positioning. And I think when he came back for the second half, it wasn't quite as solid. He was getting out of position more. And when you're out of position, you're that size, it's really hard to get back into a good spot. So that has just to be a crucial thing for him. And, he's talented. Second round pick, right? Nashville, second round pick. Other people see it too. And he looked good there for a while. And they're gonna need him to take on some of the load because you are not necessarily seeing it from Gruber right now. So they really need Rombach to be that guy.
Yeah, I've been seeing people talk about the defense next year, how worried they are. Both of us were kind of watching Hoppy's podcast the other night. I just happened to, "Oh, he's on. Look at that." And all of a sudden I see you had just started commenting and you were kind of curious about Levi Harper, who's having a pretty good offensive season for Saginaw up there. They could use some offense on the back end here at Minnesota right now.
I mean, I know people on our message board were, cringe. You're thinking about bringing in a draft eligible D, but they need that kind of skill back there. And I think they're going to need somebody out of the portal. I've been kind of looking at, 8 Atlantic hockey guys who might be options, or CCHA guys who might be an option. Can you find
CHA guys?
Yeah. Can you find a guy like Godowski or Polkamp at a smaller school and entice them with a spot at Minnesota? That would be a good addition for the Gophers next year, in addition to Harper. You look at Maceo Phillips, he's not going to be a fancy pants skill offensive guy. He's going to be hard to play against. And, Todd, I don't know if you've seen any of the Gamblers games this season, but he's kind of a villain of the USHL, I think.
I got that impression from some of the highlights I've seen. Yeah.
A lot of penalty minutes.
Yeah. Right. I mean, but sometimes that when you're, when you're looking for your identity, a guy like that just like goes out there and says, all right, put it all on me. Let me be the lightning rod. You guys do what you need to do. And that can help sometimes. It just feels like, as long as that guy can take it, it's like over a course of, 6-7 months, being that guy, which it kind of seems like he's comfortable there. So, it's always interesting to see the transition of guys that are kind of the agitators in the USHL to come to college, and how long does it take them to know what the lines are and how far you can go without ending up getting run for fighting and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
But sometimes you need a guy too who's just like, oh, you want to forecheck and win that race to the puck? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I dare you. Like sometimes you need a guy like that. And you look at the Gopher blue line, there aren't really guys who are like that right now. Rombach has the size and the ability to, but I don't know if he's got the confidence quite yet to be as physical as he can be. Like we see it at times. But I think his game is still growing so much, and I see more skill out of him than physicality type stuff. At least, watching his decision making and how he plays. He uses his length and his ability to close gaps that way more than closing gaps and being physical.
More. We need more Viggs on the physical end, because you could tell he's still kind of a little awkward. Maybe, I don't know if he had a growth spurt or something like that, Biggs. It seems like he's still trying to fit in, but he could really be a big physical presence out there and be that guy who is like a nice type player who could protect the puck and hold on to the puck and use his size, not just for physical play, but just controlling the game. That's what I'm kind of hoping for out of him.
Well, when I watched the team practice earlier in the year, I saw guys like Moore, Hendrickson, Pritchard, Moe. Like those are some pretty big forwards. It just kind of stood out with me. But I haven't necessarily seen them on time in the forecheck. And that's kind of the next step for them. I think the player we've seen the most is Hendrickson, being physical around the net and making plays, but still forechecking. We're just waiting for a little bit more from those guys. And I think, sometimes you need tone setters. I think Mike Hastings at Wisconsin brought some of those guys with him, guys who could set the tone and say, this is how we're going to be coached. This is how we execute it. I don't know if, the young guys at the U have that example to see it, because that's a big part of college hockey, I think, is having upperclassmen who already understand how to play the game and show them how.
All right, the big question, Todd, is there going to be a post-game Facebook with Vigo this weekend? I think you guys got to do it on Saturday night.
We could probably make that happen Saturday night, right? If you're going to be there.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you're kind of in control of that thing, and we'll see how the game goes and how much overtime we get and lines and things like that. So.
Right. And how well, yeah, I'll have 2 games to talk about from that day. So yeah,
we'll see if we can make it happen.
I'm up for it. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll probably already be at the local establishment, but bring it up on my phone.
There's a chance I might be running into a nice time Saturday night as well, so we'll see.
Uh-oh.
So, could be on my agenda later. I'm trying to skate more. I got to use the Cascade CBX. I got to, actually, need it. apply it from time to time. I've got a little forearm injury, putting a little CBD on.
Look at that.
Rub it in there. Good lemongrass. Cooling. It helps.
I should really put it on my. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna put it on my. Use it on my knees.
Yeah, throw a little
I've
on your
got
neck.
bad- My knees are just terrible.
Well, relieves a little tension.
I know. I've been a little nervous about it, but I just got to do it.
Todd, Logan Hensler, Terrible Will Jr.
Yes.
Looks like he's getting points in the second half.
Yeah.
I haven't watched Wisconsin very closely. Has he just kind of rebounded and water off a duck's back on this?
You know, when I saw him in the World Juniors, it just looked like he didn't know what he was supposed to be. And I kind of have felt that way a little bit in a lot of his games here at Wisconsin too, where he really wants to be a guy that's going to push the puck up, and it's going to be a guy that's going to create, a good pass out of the back end, and then get up and be there for a chance to get involved in the offensive zone. But I just don't know that he's confident enough in himself right now to do that. There's been some flashes where, you see, he just, drops a pass out of, from his own face-off dot diagonally across to the other blue line. And it's like, okay, that is what you need to do. More of that.
Do that more.
Yes. But it's been so like hit or miss that I know they would love to see him, be just kind of the authority there. The guy that's going to go and it's like, okay, I'm here. You're going to have to deal with me.
Mhm.
And he just hasn't done that enough. So still trying to coax that out of him, I think. It's, when you're having the struggles in the D zone that they've had in the last 4 weeks, that gets to be more of a challenge too. Of you don't necessarily trust yourself, and you don't want to be the guy that's screwing up. So, I think that's kind of the situation they found themselves in there. And it's everyone knows he's talented. He's going to be a good player. It's just look, show yourself so we can show you on tape, sort of thing of like, put it out there so we can reinforce it with you that, yeah, this was good. Okay, maybe don't do this one, but do this, and this again, because these are the things that work for you. So
you almost want to say it's like, this one went well. Let's try to figure out why it went well. What did you do different in this situation that allowed you to make that pass or make that, join the rush play that you didn't do in these other ones?
Yeah.
Just give them some landmarks and some anchors for their game. Because I think that's, part of what's happening with Minnesota too. And it's showing itself in the number of icings that Minnesota is putting up. I wish that was a stat that got tracked somewhere, because it just feels like Minnesota is icing the puck way too often. And it's just, guys nervous with the puck on their stick and not sure where to put it. We've seen some really bad mistakes end up in their own net. And so it's just that decision-making is lacking. I think some of it's like the forwards aren't handling passes that aren't perfect. So then they get stuck and then they get tired, and it just kind of compounds itself. So it's kind of a two-way street sometimes.
It's been all over the place though, Viggs. I mean, you got the icings, and then that means you got to rely on hopefully winning a face-off, which they're terrible at this year. And then when you got the other instances where you're giving up the puck, you're trying to get it out of the zone, and all of a sudden you're putting it on a Michigan stick. What's going on? So it's kind of a bunch of things coming together there, Viggs.
Well, in game situation stuff too, like last minute of the period or out against the top line, or things like that. Like, you just got to get a little more comfortable so that you can recognize what's happening and learn from it. And they're learning the hard way. They often say you don't always learn from your success. You learn a lot more from your failures. And there's a lot of learning going on right now.
So Wisconsin's other World Junior guy was Luke Osborne, defender, and I liked him in the first half of the season. He was -8 last weekend.
Ooh.
So I'm interested to see how he bounces back. Like, what does this weekend look like for him? Is he tentative? Is he like gun shy almost? Is he like just not wanting to engage in a lot of things, or is he right back to just being the guy who's putting it out there and willing to at least give the effort, even if it ends up in a mistake, and trusting that he's gonna be able to recover from it. So we'll see.
That was such a weird game, though. I was watching part of that game, and I'm like, oh, between periods, Wisconsin's up 2-0 pretty quick.
Mhm.
And then I'm tweeting you a little later on, going, "What the HE
was
double hockey
such a
sticks
weird-
is going on?"
Such a weird game because Penn State had the protocol violation before it.
They did. Yeah.
So Wisconsin, starts the game on the power play. Penn State guy gets called for playing with a broken stick a minute in. And so Wisconsin gets a 5-on-3, and they do absolutely nothing with that first 3 minutes on the power play. Then there's a major ejection for a Penn State player later in the first period. Wisconsin scores 2 on that. Looks like it's like, well, okay, here they go. And then the rest of the way is just
steamroll touchdown. It was just like,
Yeah.
what the heck's happening?
just in waves. Yeah.
It was goofy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
I was a little more impressed because we didn't get the scoring going last weekend, but a 3-1 and a 3-2 loss on the road. What, considering how bad the Gophers are this year, I wasn't that disappointed. I'm more disappointed that it's been 7 straight, and they just haven't had any bounces. Or I mean, you'd think if you can get like this weekend, you win Friday, you never know.
Yep, you never know.
You lose Friday, it's like, oh boy, we were close to 9. They were kind of in desperation mode here Saturday. So, college hockey, it's why we love it.
Well, I just feel that with young guys, confidence is such a big thing. Like, if Beckett Hendrickson was confident right now, I'm sure he's got 5 goals in the second half of the year. But he's not. So he's just not confidently putting away chances that he has. He's hitting the pipe. He's playing a little too fine. Some of these D, they're just not confident on the puck to make the right pass, so it's a little bit off. And guys, when they catch the puck, they're not confident in their reads. They're not getting going with speed. And it's not ability with a lot of these guys. They're all talented players. Like, if you watch them in like the skill work that they do when there's no read or anything, like, they can snipe on anybody. But when you put them in the game situation and there's that little hesitation, it just shows up. And, Michigan, that's probably one of the most confident teams I've seen Minnesota play. They didn't hardly mishandle anything during that game. Even when the Gophers were having success and pushing, Michigan was still in pretty clear control that game. There was only like a 10-minute stretch where it felt like Brody Lamb just said, okay, I figured it out. And then it disappeared again. Very challenging weekend for that. Michigan State was closer, but they're still not there yet.
Steve's asking what was the protocol violation. They were laid off the ice, I do believe.
Yeah.
How did that work, though? Did they call it right then, or did they, like, the beginning when they came out, did they go 2-minute penalty, or how does that work?
So I was watching this all happen, and the referees were skating off the ice into their tunnel, and then they came back toward the penalty box and said something into the to the scorers table. I thought that's what it was, that because I saw that it was like 22:52 when the last guy was off the ice, and so I asked them to call down from the press box to the scorers table and ask them if they told them there was a penalty. And well, we eventually got word that, yeah, it was. We're not really sure what they're calling, but we know there's a penalty. So, but we could figure out what it was. But yeah, it was just a weird situation. I haven't seen that happen in a game I've been at. It's happened I think now 3 times to Wisconsin opponents, but the other ones were on the road.
So did the PA just make an announcement before the puck drop? Say, hey, that's
I think it was like in the first, like right after the puck dropped, is like you said.
Okay.
Yeah. Penn State
It
penalties,
just seems
protocol
weird. Maybe I would
violations.
think like the ref,
Edge
like,
minor.
everyone gets lined up, ready to go. They're short. Maybe the ref should just turn around and say, hey, due to a protocol violation, we called 2 minutes. And it'd be nice if somebody did that, before the puck drops. Otherwise, people are going.
There was.
I mean,
a
did
lot
they
of
have
confusion.
5 starters? How did that work?
That was our question too. Is does Wisconsin get to put its power play out on the ice, because that is a different group than they had starting? And yes, they did. So
okay.
Got to change the lineup after it was submitted because of that. So
did they get an offensive zone faceoff?
They did not. No.
Oh,
Starts to center ice.
They should get an offensive zone.
Oh, that would be
I think that is actually written in the book, how that's supposed to run when there's a penalty after
warm-ups
or for a starter period or after goals. If you get a power play after goal, you don't get the offensive zone face off for that one either. So
you would know that too, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
you would.
I would. But yeah, that was a new one for all of us to see in person, of like, and Godowski afterwards, like, yeah, they made the right call. It was our fault.
Of course, he won the game, so it's not as big a deal.
Yeah, he was right. He was not in a bad mood.
I mean, you get a goal in that first penalty, you might feel a little different, especially if you won the game like 3-2 or something like that. So
right.
Yeah, I was just curious how that all went down.
So did you get Guy after the game for a couple minutes or?
Yeah, briefly. I have to keep those fast because I don't know how long it's going to take for Hastings to get into the
same
room,
thing when they're at Mariucci is like you're trying to like interview, but you're keeping an eye over your shoulder because you don't want to miss.
So usually I'm able to talk to him in a hallway where I can see when Hastings comes out to go do his radio hit, and so that's my cue to say, okay, I got to cut this short now. But we were in the other part of their like the Zamboni tunnel side, and I couldn't see that, so I was just more nervous about that. So I was like, okay, 2 questions and I'm out of here.
The only tricky part, you'll get to talk to Hastings this weekend after the game, Viggs, but it's always so noisy in that area because it's like it's a T where everyone comes together. It's noisy, and then you also got to be, like I said, you got to pay attention with Steve Motzko because you can't see through the doors. You just all of a sudden he comes out and you literally got 2 seconds to get in there. So I wish we had a little more formal type of thing going on.
Yeah, sometimes I just wish it was a little bit more
like organized, like the Big Ten. Like once tournament happens, like, hey, get this time, you get your time, blah blah blah. So
it maybe doesn't need to be as formal as that, but it's just like more cordial. It's like we're trying to cover college hockey. Can you maybe just be patient and understanding of that somehow? It doesn't need to be perfect, but.
And we're not looking to delay the home coach coming in for 10 minutes or anything.
No,
we need 2 or 3 minutes, and
just
that's
a clear 3-minute window, And some of that's, I think, on the visiting coach is to be prompt and be like, okay, I'm just going to check in with you guys quick. And sometimes, especially like certain schools, they have like a coaches meeting, especially if they lose, and they just kind of delay it. And it's like, well, now there's no chance you get a chance to talk to them. So.
And, there's pretty good chance Minnesota goes to Wisconsin for the opening playoffs. 1 game, Viggs, isn't it? Wouldn't that be a midweek thing, though?
Could
Wednesday
be.
Night,
yeah.
Well, that's where it kind of sucks because I would love to go on down to Madison for a weekend.
I'll be done coaching my youth teams by that time, so I should have a clear calendar to to try to make it.
Road trip to Madison.
Yeah, on a Wednesday. Could be fun.
Futon.
Futon. That's that.
No,
would be
we'd
good
get
for
a
me.
hotel.
Ooh. Hotel.
GPL would pay for a hotel, and we'd go down. And Hastings, he's like Hastings. When we talked to him on Summer Sock, he says, "Come on down, we'll get y'all going." I'm like,
Maybe a different story in the playoffs than a
like I said,
October, November.
if his team
series.
wins, though, he'd be more
Well,
than happy to talk to us.
Right.
Hastings always
like-
been pretty good with us.
Be like, Mike, I want to embed with you this week. I want to see all your practices, all your team meetings, all your film review.
just to tick off Milewski.
I'm going to pitch a big story as an outsider here on the Hastings way.
I was after the Badger women's game on Sunday, I was working up in the press box at Laban, and the men's team had just open skate. The ice was available to them. No formal practice or anything. It was their day off, but if they wanted to skate, they could. And there was a bunch of guys that came out and skated, and I was like, I've got a legitimate reason to be here. I'm not going to go shielding my eyes or something here. This is my space for right now to be working for this game. So. Not
You're
like
right. I mean,
anything,
that's
anything big going on there, but I did see a couple of the players who have been injured who are out skating. So that was a little bit of insight from that.
When's your story coming out this week? Tomorrow, Friday?
I don't have a specific story on this one ahead of it, other than the bracketology I did that's coming out tomorrow morning. So
Okay.
I do have a women's story coming out tomorrow morning. Yeah.
As you look at the bracketology,
Yes.
how much do you think attendance is going to be part of it this year?
I've kind of, and I think taking a cue from what we've seen over the years, I only think they're going to make changes if they are minimal, like not changing a number 9 overall with a number 12 overall on the number on the third seed line. And I don't even know if they'll do that, honestly. I think we've seen enough that they're happy to keep the bracket integrity as much as they can, even if it means a team doesn't get to be as close to home as would help the gate there. But now I say that, and then I realize that North Dakota is the exception to every rule there, because they're going to try to get them to Sioux Falls as much as possible. So
where's Omaha right now?
they're pretty far down, aren't they?
Yeah, they're.
I think that they were up, they were clear in the 20s earlier, but
Did their goalie get hurt?
They're in the 20s, I think, but I don't know that they're much of a factor.
because that could just throw that would mess things up if
Right.
Omaha were to sneak in. They would be the number 4 in Sioux Falls and North Dakota. Would they have the balls to put them together?
They shouldn't, but
They shouldn't.
yeah,
but
I also wonder how much they try to, if Augustana gets back in to a spot, or
they're
wins
they
their
can
way
easily
in.
be in. Yeah.
How hard do they try to keep them in Sioux Falls? So, I mean, we've seen that over the years with Providence, playing in Providence when Brown was the host school there. They did go to some effort to keep them in that regional,
Well,
but
they would probably be a 4. They would probably put them there. It's like 7 miles away, whatever it is.
right.
Augustana versus Nodak to start the tournament.
Right.
Love it.
Well, let's go. Because
I think right now I've got North Dakota against Boston College just to start the tournament. So that's, I think is how that lines up. But
and maybe then you, like you mentioned, like a Denver Penn State,
Mhm.
because Denver's what in about a 2-ish, 3-ish, but probably 3-ish right now.
Three-ish
but-
right
think-
now.
Yeah, I think. Well, no, I think they. what
They're
is Penn
13
State?
right
Penn
now.
State, is Penn State
Denver.
4? So
Oh.
yeah, they were the
Penn State's 4.
4-13,
Okay.
Right.
and North Dakota is the 3-14 with then BC being
Well,
14.
still a
right?
lot of movement. So
Yeah, that's just just for fun essentially this time of the year. But
I always like to put the chaos bracket together. Like if you're just trying to like make certain fans as mad as possible, you set up these matchups.
so the weird thing is a weird thing. Maybe it's not only weird to me too, but so Michigan State being 1 and 2 in the NPI, their closest regionals are
The
Albany
Western
and
one.
Worcester. So there's no real like, oh, we need to protect their
A
traveling.
flight
group.
is a flight, right? Isn't
That's
that
exactly
kind of how you say it? Yeah.
when's the last
But
time
it also-
Michigan's hosted anything? When's the last time they had something like Grand Rapids? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Let's look it up.
Oh, yeah, that's. I can't remember a Grand Rapids one in the last 10 years. I mean, I'm just going off memory, but
2013,
okay.
Grand Rapids, Michigan was the last. So 12 years, 13 years. Yeah.
What year was Minnesota in Grand Rapids? What was that?
Was that 2009?
Or was that the
No, there was one
Oh,
in
it's-
Minneapolis. There was 2013 was
wasn't
Grand
that
Rapids.
where Yale won?
Yeah,
in
but
overtime?
there was a Minneapolis regional in 2009, so it would have been that one. 2007 was Grand Rapids.
Or was that the year Yale was that
Yale won it.
2013? Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been 2013. Yep,
Okay.
because that's what it was. Pittsburgh was the Rosen 4. Yeah, so Grand Rapids in 2013, 2009, 2007. But like I said, it's been 13 years.
And if you have enough of them that don't do well attendance wise, the people putting them on get real leery about putting the money up on doing that. So that's what happened with Green Bay and Michigan Tech wanting to do a regional there. I mean, I think Michigan Tech has moved on to other priorities just in general in terms as an athletic department, but they probably made a lot of money off of 2006 when Wisconsin was there. I'm sure they lost a lot of money out of a few years later when it was North Dakota and CC and RPI and someone else. I don't remember, but even though North Dakota was in it, was a really small crowd. So
The real interesting one is in 2 years. There's one in Fargo and Sioux Falls the same. season. Fargo's next year, Loveland next year as well.
yeah, that's not great for the distribution of things in the West when they're it feels
Yeah,
like
but you know what?
Eastern kind of regional.
Yeah, it does feel
Worcester
Eastern, yes.
and Bridgeport or whoever, being
Well,
not
just
too
see
far from
the
each other.
venues out west, there just aren't many options. It's right now it's Loveland because DU wants to have one close, and Sioux Falls and Fargo. Like, there's no other real options.
What about Iowa?
I sometimes wish the Des Moines
Yeah.
AHL building would get interested, but I suppose they need a host
Yeah.
that would want to have it there, and I think they would rather do it in Sioux Falls and Fargo.
I've always wondered whether Milwaukee would get into the regional thing with the Milwaukee Panther Arena where the Admirals play the AHL games. I mean, it's a bigger building. You wouldn't fill it up probably, but when there's a decent crowd in there, a 5,000 seat crowd for Admirals games, it's a pretty good atmosphere, but
Or we just go to home sites.
well,
always got
why would you even talk about that going to the easy direction?
That's
Yeah,
so
why-
idiotic.
Who would
Jesus.
ever consider that?
Well, like I said, it just takes a couple more. Like I said, it takes more number one seeds going down when they're hosting, or just that type of thing, or not when they're not hosting. Like Maine last year would have been a great. I mean, that game should have been in Maine.
I think we just need more new coaches.
That's
happen.
true.
Yeah,
You know, we have a lot of old school coaches who just don't want to do it.
It's changing quickly. It's changing
and
quickly.
you also have to consider that there's no perfect way of doing it on campus either. You're gonna have to make some concessions and some things scheduling wise to make that happen. Not to say that's not.
Then how do the women do it, Todd?
Well, there's a lot less of them, and there's a lot less demand for buildings being full in them. So it's just, I think it's more of a, if you're stretching it out another weekend, where, and I hear they don't really want to give up the week in between, or they don't want to match anything up with basketball Final Four. So
Play in December.
you're going to have to, something's going to have to move there. And whether it's that, or whether it's, cutting down the number of games, which no one would vote for.
No, December, you get 2 weeks probably at least in there, right there.
Yeah, and the problem there is that everyone brings up, World Juniors. We don't want to schedule against World Juniors. We're losing 2 or 3 guys. We don't want to put games there. I mean, that was, Wisconsin's had this tournament in Milwaukee during the World Juniors for the last 5 years, I want to say. And they've had someone in the World Juniors every time. And it's, maybe this year you could say it cost them having a couple players gone and Quinn Finley at the Spengler Cup. But I know Mike Hastings is not a fan of that timing and has talked about trying to get that tournament moved to a different time or a different format, or just something that is not putting it in that time of the year. So there's a lot of people that would say play more games in December. Well, we can't play during finals. So that's 1 week out. We don't want to play during World Juniors. So that's another week out. It just becomes you might have to look at, playing some midweek games, which is obviously a lot easier in the East than it is in the West. But if the season shrinks by a week, you might have to do some more things like the Big Ten's doing with its playoff, cutting it from 3 weeks to 2. So how much are you willing to do there? Not saying that there's not a reason there to go towards campus regional or campus tournament site games, but it's not as easy as just saying, do it.
I mean, I think if there's a place to cut, it's the conference tournament. It makes the regular season mean more, and it allows you to get to the postseason faster. Because I don't think any team dreams about winning their conference tournament. It's probably the least important of the 3, unless it's giving you the bid. And really, who do you want your bids to go to?
Top 4 teams, 1 weekend.
Well, and we've seen where in basketball too, they've started cutting, the Big Ten started cutting teams out of the tournament.
Oh, it's because it's
when they got to
28 now though too.
Right.
So
it was not feasible at that point, but still they probably should have done something like that earlier when it was 14 and you're on, 5 days? A team could have to play 5 days in a row. That's that
there's like the double bye now in
Yeah.
the basketball tournaments and stuff. It's like, why not just do that for hockey? 1 and 2 just have a 2-game tournament. They play the winner of a play-in game, and then they play the championship.
Go back to the way the WCHA did it back in the day, where they never actually had a champion. They just played down to the 2 teams that would get into the tournament. So there was 2 semifinal series, and that was it. No championship. You guys are going on.
Yep.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know.
How's the vibe around Wisconsin hockey, Todd?
It's better.
Better this year?
The crowd, they had like 13 some thousand last Saturday night, and I think 12,000 the Saturday before that. They had another, or the Friday before that, I guess it was because it was a Thursday, Friday, because I was just going to say the Thursday game was better than I thought it was going to be, having seen the Thursday 8:00 start against Minnesota earlier this year not be very good at all.
Yeah.
But it's that just doesn't work for putting fans in the building Thursday at 8:00.
No.
I mean, it doesn't work for basketball either. We see the crowds.
Does
are much smaller
Wisconsin
for those.
seem to have a lot of people who travel quite a bit to get to the games, or is it just there's too much other stuff?
Yeah, I think there's still a decent, not not talking about hours or anything like that, but within an hour of Madison is probably a fair draw for them. Yeah,
because I seem to remember hearing stuff like about
area.
Penn State. A lot of people come for the Friday night game or the Thursday night game. They stay in a hotel and then they go back after like an afternoon game on Saturday. Like that was a big thing for them to try to protect, try to shorten that turnaround.
Yeah.
Because their fan base is so spread out.
And Saturday sold out here.
I'm wondering how much red we're going to see in the building.
I'm wondering how much red or how much maroon. How many are no shows? Because it's
how many seats are we going to see?
I mean, it's 10,000 seats. That's sold out. Friday is very limited.
Yeah, it makes me interested to see what's going to happen because I feel like the vibe and the fans are on edge. The
Very
team,
much so.
I mean, they still practice like they've always practiced. Like I've seen during some stretches, body language that I wouldn't love, but it doesn't really stick during practice. Like I don't see like the slamming of sticks and stuff, and guys, not paying attention or not being ready or not being energized.
Maybe because they know Vigo's there.
Probably.
But
I do get to see a lot of the power play because on Wednesday when they have availability, that's always a special teams day. I've been trying to get to other days of the week to see other practices because their structure is pretty consistent. Like, they skate pretty hard and do skills on Monday. Tuesday they do some battle stuff, and Wednesday special teams, and Thursdays a lot of like scout stuff. So if you want to know what Wisconsin's doing, the Thursday practice is a good one to attend because you can see how they're preparing for the weekend. And then Friday is just kind of like a skate through in the morning. So, but like they seem to practice well. After the game, there's a lot of falling on swords when they lose. Like they're pretty, like they know what they're doing wrong. Like they're not, yeah, I know kind of stuff. It's like, yep, I screwed up. I got to do this better. That kind of stuff. They know where their shortcomings are and they're trying to address them. So it's not one of those teams where you say, well, do this. It's like I did. It's not like that. Which actually last year, I felt that was kind of how the team was. They were ignoring their mistakes. They weren't holding themselves accountable, which might have been a sign that team was going AWOL.
Not listening to coaches.
Well, it just seemed like they're just like, oh, we'll figure it out. We got it. Whereas this year, it's very much, yep, we know what we're not doing. Like you interview the players, Jimmy Clark today, he's just like, yep, we got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do that. And it's like, oh yeah, hold on to pucks longer, long ozone possessions, efficient connection between shifts, understanding the game situation. It's like, yes, those are all things that they need to be working on. Like they know it and they admit it, which is different than some other teams I've been around.
Yeah. It's the teams that know it and try to fix it but can't are the ones that you really go like, oh, that it's just not going to happen, right?
Mhm.
If this is what you can put out there with the team you have, with the bodies you have, and the development you're able to make within a season, you can only go so far.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. All right, boys, I'm tired.
We're in the
Yeah.
dog days of the season right now.
Yeah.
End of January is the tough part of the hockey season, I think.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
As a coach,
Plus,
as
I
a
didn't sleep
player, as a
much last
journalist,
Mm-hmm.
parent.
Oh, well,
It's hard. Life's hard
I told
right now.
Todd, but I became a grandfather for the second time on Friday night, Viggs.
Congratulations. Is that why you
So-
were not at the game on Saturday?
No, they were at Michigan State, so
Or I mean, yeah. Sorry.
it was just the 23rd, 10 o'clock. We didn't go with it until the next morning because it's
My weekends
Boring.
are blending together right now, Jim,
oh
so.
everything life blends together now.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just don't put it on social because whatever. And my daughter doesn't want any pictures on social media. That's tough for us old Gen Xers.
Way to be
It's
respectful.
Oh yeah, I don't want to get my butt kicked. So call it a night here, guys.
I think so. Thanks everyone for joining us, especially you, Todd. 20 times.
Of course.
20 times.
Well done.
Thank you.
Cheers
Cheers.
to my empty
Water.
water.
Yeah.
Oh, I got
Water.
water.
Yep.
A couple drops left. All right, folks. We'll catch you next week. See you later.
So guess who called me while I was making my chicken parm tonight?
Ooch.
Wasn't Booch. I didn't post the picture until after, but a certain coach gave me a call.